I jolted awake to the sound of heavy footsteps storming down the hall. My heart hammered as I curled around my belly, shielding my unborn child from the rage I knew was coming. The door flew open and Dane's hulking frame filled the doorway, reeking of cigarettes and stale beer. "Get up," he barked, grabbing my arm and wrenching me off the bed. I cried out as pain exploded through my shoulder. "The baby," I gasped. "Do you think I care about that thing?" He threw me to the floor. "This is my house. You serve me." Tears flooded my eyes. This was not the tender man I had fallen in love with 2 years ago. Dane had shown me affection and stability when I had none, had needed it so desperately after my parents died. My brother Tobin took me in, but soon had a family of his own to provide for. When we met, Dane made me feel safe, hopeful. Now he was a stranger, consumed by rage and jealousy. "On your feet," Dane snapped, kicking me in the ribs. I curled around my belly, shielding the tiny life within. "Please," I prayed my child would be spared from his fury. Dane grabbed my hair and yanked my head back. "Look at me," he bellowed. I obeyed, steeling myself. His eyes, once warm, were now hard and ruthless. "You will learn respect." He drew back his fist. I braced for the impact, for the explosion of pain. Crash! The front door splintered open. Heavy footsteps pounded toward us. Tobin and Kira burst into the room, faces twisted in rage at the sight of me cowering before my husband. "Get away from her!" Tobin roared, grabbing Dane and slamming him against the wall. My brother's strength had always paled next to Dane's bulk, but now Tobin's fury made him formidable. Kira rushed toward me, horror etched across her delicate features. "Alara!" "My God!" She helped me sit up, her touch infinitely gentle next to the abuse I had become accustomed to. I leaned into her embrace, overwhelmed with gratitude. "She's my wife," Dane spat at Tobin. "This is none of your business." "The hell it isn't." Tobin's eyes blazed. "She's coming with us. If you come near her again, I swear to God I'll kill you." I trembled in Kira's arms. Could this nightmare finally be over? Dane wrenched out of Tobin's grasp. For a moment, the two men stared each other down. My husband's eyes promised revenge for this humiliation. But seeing my protectors filled me with something long absent from my life. Hope. Whatever came next, at least I would not face it alone. At least my child would be born free of Dane's tyranny. I placed a hand over my belly, soothing the little flutter within. As Tobin and Kira led me safely into the light of day, I swore my unborn son or daughter would never suffer my fate. Not when I had two guardians willing to stand up to the dark. I winced as Kira dabbed antiseptic on my swollen lip. We sat in her and Tobin's tiny kitchen while my brother paced, raking his hands through his hair. "Why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" Tobin asked, agony etched on his face. My tongue probed the tender split in my lip. "I was ashamed," I whispered, "and scared. Dane said if I told anyone." I shook my head, tears burning. Tobin crouched before me, gentle despite his fury. "Alara, listen to me. That bastard will never lay a hand on you again. I swear it." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Since our parents died, Tobin had been my guardian angel. He was the one who introduced me to Dane after I couldn't find work. My brother only wanted what was best. How could he have known? Fresh tears welled up. I dashed them away, wincing at the throb in my cheekbone. Kira tenderly grasped my hands. "We'll get you and the baby to safety," she said softly. "My sister and Freystone can shelter you both." I shook my head wildly. "He'll find me. He'll." I couldn't finish. Just thinking of Dane's wrath made me shudder. A knock on the door made everyone freeze. Heavy footsteps crossed the porch, then came the splintering of wood. "Alara!" Dane's roar was pitiless. I leapt up, heart hammering. "Like hell," Tobin growled, rolling up his sleeves. He met my terrified eyes. "I'll handle this." He pulled open the door before Dane could break it down. My husband towered on the porch, murderous rage twisting his features. "That little bitch is my property," he spat at Tobin. "She's coming back with me." Tobin didn't flinch. "The hell she is. You come near my sister again, I'll make you regret it." Dane drove his fist into Tobin's jaw. My brother reeled but stayed upright, the fists clenched. Fresh panic flooded me. Tobin was brave, but no match for Dane's ruthless strength. I couldn't let anyone else suffer for my sake. I had to protect this newfound glimmer of hope for my baby's future. Steeling myself, I stepped between the two men. "Please, Dane," I whispered, despising the trembling in my voice. "Don't hurt him. I'll come home with you." Silent tears traced my swelling cheek. Dane grabbed my throat, his lips twisting in a ruthless smile. "That's my good, obedient wife," he purred. Over his shoulder, I watched Tobin's face transform with rage and anguish. But I silently pleaded for him not to act, not when it would cost more than I could bear. I let Dane drag me outside, back into the waiting maw of darkness. Everything in me screamed to resist, but my child's safety had to come first. I could only pray my self-sacrifice would buy Tobin and Kira enough time to stop Dane for good. If not, then may God have mercy on me and my baby, because my husband never would. Dane dragged me back into the apartment, his grip like iron on my arm. He shoved me onto the tattered sofa and stood with arms crossed, glaring down at me. My stomach churned with dread. I rested my palms on my swollen belly as if I could shield my child from my husband's ire. Knowing now that his violence could target even an unborn baby made me sick with fear. "How long?" Dane demanded. I raised my eyes hesitantly. "How long? What?" His hand cracked across my cheek. I gasped, more startled than pained. "How far along is the bastard child you're carrying?" My hand flew protectively to my stomach. My son or daughter was no bastard. This baby was all that was pure and good in my wretched life. 6 months, I whispered, dropping my gaze once more. A malevolent smile spread across Dane's face. "So you lay with another while swearing to be faithful to me?" "Never!" I cried out. "You know this is your child. You know that I have been true." Dane only chuckled darkly. "Come now, Alara. Do you really expect me to believe that pathetic whelp Tobin is man enough to give you a baby when I have failed?" Shock reverberated through me. Tobin? My brother? Comprehension slammed into my core. Dane had always resented Tobin's easy confidence, his effortless ability to provide for his family despite Dane's superior social standing and wealth. And judging by the lustful glances he had thrown Kira's way at our wedding, Dane had envied them their true and easy intimacy. This was merely another manifestation of Dane's jealousy and spite toward my only real protector, the man I considered my true family. I stood on trembling legs, fists clenched at my sides. "Tobin is twice the man you will ever be." I spat with every shred of courage I could muster. I raised my hand and slapped Dane hard across the face. His head jerked sideways. Disbelief flashed in his eyes as his cheek flushed an angry red. I braced myself for his retaliation, but none came. Instead, his lips slowly twisted into a terrifying smile. "Well, well. The mouse finally shows her teeth," Dane purred, rubbing his jaw. "I was beginning to think you'd lost your fire entirely." He moved towards me with sudden speed, backing me up against the wall. With my swollen belly hindering my escape, I had nowhere to go as Dane placed his palms flat on the faded wallpaper beside my head and leaned in close enough for me to smell the coffee on his breath. "Let's make one thing clear, wife," he said, the threat in his voice sending shivers down my spine. "You belong to me now and forevermore, and whatever bastard seed festers in your womb means nothing to me. So you play nice, my pet, or you will learn what true suffering is." Days blurred into weeks as I drifted through a haze of fear and despair. Dane's abuse escalated. It was as if my show of defiance had awakened a sleeping beast within him. Bruises flowered on my arms and back from his rough handling. I hid them under long sleeves, not willing to invite more of his twisted accusations. My only joy came from the flutters deep within as my baby grew healthy and strong, oblivious to the darkness surrounding its arrival. I endured it all in silence, resolute in my vow to protect this innocent life. One night, Dane came home in a drunken rage. I scrambled off the sofa as he stormed through the door and grabbed my arm, his grip crushing. "Worthless bitch!" he roared. "Can't even keep the house clean." He flung me aside and I crashed into the coffee table. Pain exploded through my hip. I curled around my belly, shielding my unborn child from the brunt of the fall. Dane loomed closer, fists clenched. Then came a pounding at the front door. "Alara!" Tobin's voice was a clarion call. My brother threw open the door. Rage etched on his face at the sight of me cringing on the floor. Kira was right behind him. Dane wheeled on them with a guttural snarl. "Get out! She's my property!" Tobin's punch smashed into Dane's jaw. My husband reeled backwards, shock and fury twisting his expression. Tobin grabbed his shirt and slammed him against the wall. "She is my sister!" Each word was punctuated by the impact of Tobin's fist against Dane's face. My brother was slender compared to Dane's bulk, but rage made him formidable. Kira rushed to my side, collapsing beside me. Her hand gently grasped mine. "Alara, we have to go," she pleaded. "Can you stand?" I watched the brawl with detachment, the pain in my hip receding behind the adrenaline flooding my veins. Tobin was buying us time. This was our chance. With Kira's help, I struggled to my feet, one hand supporting my heavy belly. She wrapped her arm around my waist and led me towards sweet freedom, where her car waited by the curb. A roar echoed behind us. I glanced back to see Dane rear up and charge, face twisted in psychotic fury. Before I could scream a warning, he slammed into Tobin's side, driving them both to the floor. "No!" I shrieked. Terror crested and broke as I watched Dane's fists rise and fall, pummeling Tobin where he lay defenseless. Kira and I surged back into the apartment. She grabbed Dane's discarded whiskey bottle and swung with all her might. Glass shattered against his skull and he collapsed sideways with a guttural groan. In the echoing silence, Tobin struggled to rise. Welts and blood masked his gentle features, but his voice was firm as he grasped my shoulder. "It's over, Alara. You're safe now." As we left Dane's broken form behind, I knew my brother spoke the truth. We had weathered the darkness and emerged into dawn's hopeful light. The long road to healing stretched before me, but with Tobin and Kira beside me, I feared nothing, not anymore. Kira pressed a mug of steaming tea into my trembling hands. I sat on their sagging sofa, wrapped in a blanket, still struggling to process the night's events. My brother's face was purpled with bruises, but the set of his jaw was resolute. "Dane will come after us when he wakes," I whispered. Tobin crouched before me, his blue eyes, so like our father's, gentle but determined. "He won't get near you again. I let him fool me once. It won't happen twice." The weight of all they had sacrificed for my sake threatened to crush me. "You can't know that," I pleaded. "You don't know what he's capable of." Kira squeezed my shoulder. "Whatever comes, we'll face together." A pounding on the front door made me jolt, sloshing hot liquid over my shaking hands. Tobin spun, placing himself between me and the sound. Kira's hand slipped into her skirt pocket, fingers wrapping around what I knew to be a compact pistol. The pounding came again, more insistent. Tobin wrenched the door open, muscles coiled to attack, then went rigid with shock. I peered around him to see Dane slumped on the porch, face swollen and stained with blood and dirt. One eye was sealed shut by bruising, and his right arm hung at an odd angle. But somehow he smiled through split and swollen lips when he saw me cringing behind my brother. "Alara," he rasped, digging his heels in as if to stand. "You're my wife." Tobin shoved him back down with one hand. "Like hell she is. How did you find us?" Dane coughed, then spit a wad of blood onto the weathered boards. "Wasn't hard," he grunted. "I'm an old friend of the family, after all." Confusion knifed through me. I clutched Tobin's shoulder with my free hand, my stomach roiling as dread crept up my spine. What is he talking about? Tobin's shoulders curled inward, like a weight was settling over him. He turned and grasped my hands with gentle urgency. "Alara, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you long ago." He guided me back inside, nodding for Kira to watch Dane. Then he sat me on the sofa and crouched before me again, regret and anguish chasing each other across his face. "I've known Dane far longer than you have, little sister. We were childhood friends. Practically brothers." Tobin's voice dropped to a pained whisper. I never dreamed he was capable of such darkness, that he would turn the affection I once felt into this madness. The shattered pieces of my reality cut fresh wounds across my soul. I stared at my brother through a film of tears, my voice barely a tremulous breath. "How could you bring this monster into our family?" Tobin grasped my hands, his skin rough and so achingly familiar. "I swear to you, Alara, I will spend my life making amends." Behind him, Kira stepped onto the porch, pistol raised. My brother's eyes hardened with ruthless purpose. "But first, we end this." I winced as Kira examined the dark bruises wringing my throat. Her green eyes blazed with fury, but her voice was gentle. "Alara, why protect him?" she asked. I turned my face away, ashamed. It had been 1 month since our escape from Dane. 1 month since I had collapsed sobbing in Kira's arms after Tobin revealed their history with my tormentor, the man I had once hoped to call husband. Tobin wanted to end Dane permanently, but I convinced him not to tarnish his soul for my sake. So Dane rotted in prison while we pieced together the fragments of our lives. But yesterday Dane had cornered me on the courthouse steps, public and bold as you please. His parole hearing was scheduled despite my testimony. His eyes promised revenge even as they drank in my face. When his hands closed around my throat, relishing my pulse, none intervened until I sank into darkness. I awoke to Kira tending my injuries, Tobin bellowing at the chief of police. But the strangle marks branding my flesh also marked the imprint of Dane's soul on mine. He thought to reclaim me, and perhaps a dark part of my spirit longed to revisit his particular hell. Kira grasped my shoulders. Dane wants you to protect him. Don't give him that power. I shut my eyes against a rush of anguished tears. In my mind's eye I saw the innocent love shining from Dane's eyes when we wed. I heard the whispered promises that bound my heart to his with silken threads, now thorns embedded there for eternity. Suddenly my grief turned to iron in my chest. What had it gotten me but a succession of bruises, walking on eggshells in my own home, flinching at every loud noise. I would carry Dane's fingerprints for life, etched onto my very soul. No more. I dashed the tears away and straightened my spine. Kira watched wariness dawn into pride as she recognized the birth of her ally. Dane took everything from me, I said quietly. Even now he thinks I'm his possession, but no longer. At Tobin's protest, I slipped from the shelter of their apartment the next dawn. I knew where Dane breakfasted those early mornings, where the demons inside him drowned their thirst, if only briefly. I felt his eyes on me the moment I entered, heard his smug greeting as I slid behind his chair in the shadowed corner, felt his shock as I pressed cold metal to his throat and whispered, "This is for every bruise I ever hid, for every night you threatened the life inside me." His sudden pallor was gratifying, the pleading in his eyes even more so. Let him experience one fraction of the powerlessness he inflicted on me for years. "You created a monster," I murmured. "I'll see you buried and cold before I let you crawl back into my thoughts." When I walked back into the dawning light alone, Tobin saw the transformation in my face. His shoulders straightened as he realized the fight flowing bright and fierce in my veins. We would see this through, brother and sister, bound by blood and scars. No ghost would haunt me ever again. I straightened my skirt with sweat-slicked palms, struggling to still the tremors in my hands. The courthouse loomed before me, a monument to justice, about to be served. Tobin gave my fingers a gentle, bracing squeeze. "Are you ready for this?" he asked solemnly. At my terse nod, he pushed open the heavy doors. The cavernous courtroom vibrated with anticipation. I kept my chin high, ignoring the whispers that followed us down the aisle. In my arms, I cradled my infant son, swaddled tightly against my chest. His tiny body anchored me as we took our place behind the prosecutor. The judge entered, black robes swirling. The room rose respectfully. As we sat, the doors behind the bench flew open. 2 officers led Dane in handcuffs to the defendant's table. His glare seared me the moment he entered. I forced myself to meet it steadily, cradling my son closer. Dane's eyes dropped to the bundle in my arms, upper lip curling in a sneer. Then he turned away, leaning casually back in his chair to survey the audience with an air of bored indifference. My testimony was brutal in its honesty. I recounted every horror of our marriage in vivid detail, the manipulation that lured me in, each humiliating abuse, his vow to make my child suffer for my imagined sins. "He is a monster," I finished quietly, "one who hides behind a mask of civility and charm, but beneath lies the heart of a soulless coward." Dane merely examined his nails, but the tightening of his jaw revealed my words had hit their mark. Exhibit by exhibit, we built the irrefutable case against my husband. Hospital records showed old injuries consistent with abuse. Witnesses attested to seeing Dane attack me in public. The gun Kira had used to subdue him during my escape bore only Tobin's clean prints. Dane's confident expression slowly shifted to incredulity, then fury as his web of lies collapsed around him. At the first crack in his superior mask, vindication roared within me. I watched, spine ruler straight, as he took the stand in his own reckless defense. Dane painted himself the long-suffering husband to an unfaithful wife. His son was no child of his, he claimed. My infidelity had invited punishment. "Lies!" The word ripped from my throat before Tobin could restrain me. Every eye turned my way, but I only had eyes for Dane as I gently handed my son to Kira. Then I stalked forward, my entire body shaking with outrage accumulated from years of silence. "You dare stand there and besmirch what you have brutalized?" My voice echoed off the arched ceilings. "The only falsehoods spoken here are falling from your forked tongue." I spun to appeal to the stony-faced jurors. What is the word of a pregnant woman, one who has only shown compassion her entire life, against that of a proven violent offender, of a man whose charm and standing make his threat all the more sinister? My words dropped into absolute silence, but for my son's soft gurgle. I walked back to Kira, gentling my tone as I lifted the baby to my cheek. "The only innocence in this room lies in my arms, gentlemen. I implore you, do not let it be corrupted by the poison of this serpent." The foreman's eyes shone bright. Behind him, Dane sank into his seat, recognition of his defeat breaking across his face at last. I blinked against the brilliant sunlight, pausing at the foot of the courthouse steps. Tobin and Kira flanked me like patient sentinels while I adjusted the strap of the baby carrier across my chest. My son burbled happily, his tiny hand curled around my finger. The click of a lighter made me glance over. Across the street, half hidden by a copse of trees, Dane lifted the dancing flame to the cigarette between his lips. His eyes locked with mine over the sparking light, flat and cold in his expressionless face. He took a long, slow drag, wreathed by tendrils of smoke that faded on the breeze between us. There was no menace in that penetrating stare today, only grudging acceptance that his empire of lies had fallen at last. I gazed back levelly, seeing the man before me with new clarity. Just a sad, bitter soul who knew no other way to live except by extinguishing the light of others. Well, no longer. The small flame of innocence in my arms would grow into a bonfire of joy and self-worth that no one could ever dampen. I would make certain of it. I blinked and Dane was gone, leaving only the lingering acrid scent of tobacco hanging beneath the trees. Tobin's hand gripped my shoulder. "It's time to put the ghost to rest, Alara," he said gently. His eyes sought mine, bright with purpose. "I think it's time we went home." I let the words settle comfortingly around my heart as Tobin led us to the car where Kira waited. Home. A safe harbor I had not known in years, save for the shelter of my guardians through the storm. But as we navigated out of the bustling city into gentle hills mantled in emerald, my breath caught at the sight of home emerging through the dappled light. The cottage was just as I remembered, whitewashed walls festooned with vines and brilliant flowers, wide windows welcoming golden sunlight to kiss the polished wood floors within. It was the only real home I had known since our parents' deaths. Tobin had given up the property to follow his career in the city, had built his new life tethered in chains to Dane without even knowing. Now we had come full circle to mend and forge fresh bonds on beloved soil. I crossed the threshold into crisp, sweet air, redolent of fresh bread and dried lavender. Vases overflowed with flowers from Tobin and Kira's garden. I stroked their velvety petals, overwhelmed with gratitude for their silent reassurance that beauty could bloom in even the most scorched earth. My son's new nursery shone with honeyed light, awaiting us to build new memories within its walls. And through the windows I could glimpse the sun-drenched hill where Mama, Papa, and I once picnicked among the riotous wildflowers, where Papa had held my tiny hands as I took my first graceful steps into the world. I would walk there with my son when he was old enough, would cradle Papa's gentle wisdom and Mama's courage imprinted on my heart to share with my beautiful boy. He would never walk alone. I would battle any monster plaguing his little mind or darkening the horizon before I allowed it to haunt him, as I had been haunted. As I stood watching my son sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling in blissful peace, Tobin appeared silently beside me. Without turning, I slipped my hand into his larger one with a contented sigh. The ghosts were fading now with the breaking dawn, stripped of their power at last. My battle was won. But the war wages on, as long as light remains to fight the encroaching dark. I rested my head on Tobin's shoulder, floating on a sea of calm I had never expected to feel again. But with family surrounding me and nourishing the seeds of myself I had feared lost forever, I could weather any storm yet to come. My second chance, our second chance together, had only just begun.
The move is finally complete, yet Charles, my father-in-law, utters his disdain without bothering to address me by name. His usual arrogance is unmistakable, and though he doesn't explicitly call me out, it's evident he's directing his words at me. I've endured his attitude until now, but I've reached my limit. As I pause from wiping the table, I shoot a defiant glare at Charles, who doesn't even bother to meet my gaze. "I'll be out by today," I declare, and Charles responds with a mocking laugh, reveling in his satisfaction. His words cut deep, branding me as a mere parasite and trash. He envisions a life refreshed once I'm gone, oblivious to the profound changes his own lifestyle has undergone over the years. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Grace, and I recently turned 40. I'm married to William and currently residing with my in-laws. Despite several years of marriage, we remain childless, and there's no intention or possibility of having children. The harsh truth about William's infertility surfaced shortly after our marriage registration. Had I known from the start, I might have reconsidered our union. The revelation struck me like a pit of despair. All our dreams of building a happy family together were shattered. William, with apparent sincerity, had discussed our future children, even contributing to naming them. Little did I know, it was all a facade, a betrayal concealed beneath the guise of a promising future. Despite the profound disappointment, divorce wasn't a simple option for me. We had committed to being a family with the in-laws, who we considered our parents. Reporting a divorce a day after joining the family felt like a breach of trust. Living with the in-laws only intensified the inevitable question of when we would have children. Upon revealing our infertility, the in-laws reacted with fury. To them, a woman unable to bear children was deemed useless and deserving of immediate expulsion. Charles, my father-in-law, took the lead in treating me as a servant, stripping away any semblance of dignity. In their house, I was perpetually relegated to eating alone in the kitchen. I became part of the leftover disposal crew once the in-laws and William had finished their meals. No matter how much effort I put into cooking delicious food, all I received were the scraps left behind by them. Since getting married, I hadn't enjoyed a single satisfying meal. My weight steadily dropped, and within 6 months of marriage, my wrist bones were protruding. Initially, mother-in-law Madison bore the brunt of Charles's tirades, but once I joined the family, his focus shifted to me. Madison seemed relieved by the change. She smiled more often. William once remarked that she felt relieved not to be Charles' target anymore. Despite never smiling around Charles, Madison's demeanor improved in his absence. Charles's tyranny extended beyond targeting me. Upon learning of our infertility, he commanded me to work from dawn to dusk, deeming me lacking as a woman. I had always intended to work after marriage and had no desire to prolong my stay in their house unnecessarily. Balancing early morning chores, seeing everyone off, and heading to work proved challenging, but having a job with flexible hours helped. Despite my efforts, Charles discarded my food without tasting it, citing its appearance as the reason. Neither William nor Madison complained, choosing instead to remain silent. Despite my grievances, conversations during meals were sparse, and I often wondered if they truly enjoyed eating in silence. I had no choice but to maintain a facade of harmony with the in-laws, playing the role of a dutiful wife. As someone without parents, the weight of divorce seemed unbearable. However, Charles's demand that I contribute all my earnings to the household expenses crossed the line. While I intended to contribute, his insistence on full control over my earnings felt absurd. Protesting was futile. Charles's decisions were absolute. It seemed easier to comply, appeasing him and sparing myself the sight of Madison and William's saddened expressions. The root of the marital issues lay with Charles, whose oppression and torment overshadowed everything else. While Madison used to manage the household finances, the responsibility fell on me after marriage, a task I found overwhelming. "Isn't this too much for Grace?" Madison dared to question, only to be silenced by Charles's authoritative command to shut up. I had been dismissed in Charles's eyes, and Madison and I, as women, were deemed worthless, stripped of the privilege to voice our opinions. Taking over the household ledger from Madison initially shocked me, but after several years, I grew accustomed to it. Perhaps the acceptance stemmed from having an additional breadwinner in the house. Charles, however, began spending more recklessly, justifying it as work-related expenses, increasing his nights out, and embarking on trips with Madison and William, excluding me. This sudden change in their behavior marked a departure from the past. Despite the years that had passed, Charles continued to treat me as an outsider, labeling me a parasite or trash. In my younger years, I endured the peace that came when Charles wasn't home, not minding my role as a mere housekeeper. However, as I approached 40, I found his behavior intolerable. The fear that once kept me silent waned, and I started speaking up. Charles didn't appreciate my newfound assertiveness, leading to resentment and a worsening negative loop. Our strained relationship reached a point where Charles constantly badmouthed me, and our interactions were minimal. Whenever he spoke, it was to insult me, creating a dreadful atmosphere at home. Despite the escalating tension, I refused to comply when Charles demanded I leave the house. I snapped back, questioning where I could go knowing I had no parents. Charles, fueled by anger, slammed glasses onto the table, breaking them in the process. Tired of enduring the constant yelling, I deviated from my usual apology and spoke sharply to Charles. I pointed out that he should calm down in his older age. Unaccustomed to such defiance, Charles became furious, asserting his dominance as the master of the house, declaring that a wife like me shouldn't have opinions. Frustration reached its peak, and I confronted Charles head-on, expressing my years-long desire to be treated like a human. He retaliated, escalating to grabbing me by the collar and vehemently declaring that a person like me wasn't needed in his house. The force of his words was enough to shake the furniture, and in that moment, I was pushed away. I should have offered an apology right then and there, but I could no longer contain my frustration. "Fine, you want me to leave. That'll make you happy, right, Charles?" I looked up at him, unable to stay silent any longer. "Yes," he spat out, condescendingly looking down on me. "Then I'll do it," I declared. He stormed off to his room with a loud noise, and I, now a bit calmer, started cleaning the living room that Charles had dirtied. Madison came to check on me with a worried look, but she left without saying anything, returning to her room. I felt like I had no place in this house anymore. Neither William nor Madison would protect me, and years of endurance exploded, making me feel even more isolated. The next day, as usual, I got up early and began my routine. Charles woke up and entered the living room, sitting on the sofa, leaning back, and spreading the newspaper without even glancing at me. Then, without looking up, he asked, "Finished moving yet?" There was no way I could have moved out so soon after yesterday's events. I didn't even think he was serious. I thought it was just a drunken outburst, not something he meant. This was about leaving the house, right? "When will you leave? You have no right to live here anymore," Charles said, still not looking at me. I stopped wiping the table and turned to face him. If he was serious about wanting me to leave, then I would respond seriously. "I'll be out by today," I declared. Madison, who was listening nearby, froze, her worried gaze falling on me. It was clear that once I left, Charles would target Madison again, and she didn't want me to go. However, Charles insisted on my departure, and I had no other option. Charles laughed loudly, likely satisfied that he was getting his way. I rushed out of the living room, quickly packed my things, and left the in-laws' house. I hadn't decided where to go, but I felt liberated. I sent a message to William, who was already out, asking him to divorce me. A lawyer would contact him, and then I turned off my phone. Over the next few days, I found a lawyer and had them contact William and the in-laws. Charles, thinking divorce was inevitable, pressured William into signing the papers quickly. Despite William's reluctance, he signed the agreement under Charles's glare. I signed in front of the lawyer, and the divorce was finalized. We completed the distribution of property, and I was able to claim a settlement for Charles's harassment, which I had recorded. It was worth paying for a lawyer instead of fighting alone. Charles, concerned about his public image, avoided any complications by involving lawyers. Knowing exactly how much money Charles had from managing the household finances, I suggested an amount he could just about afford. With the property distribution and harassment settlement paid in full, I started a comfortable life in my own apartment. I used to hate being alone before marriage, but after living with the in-laws and getting divorced, I embraced the newfound freedom. I've grown to appreciate the solitude of my own time, cooking meals for myself. I relish the tranquility without anyone raising complaints. About 3 months after the divorce, Charles persistently calls, and though I assume it's nothing positive, I choose not to answer. However, a momentary lapse results in me accidentally picking up. "What have you done to my house?" Charles's voice booms through the phone. Instinctively, I move the device away from my ear to endure the loud onslaught. I respond, "I haven't done anything. I left the house as you instructed." Charles remains unsatisfied, continuing to yell. He's upset about notifications regarding issues with withdrawals, blaming me for the problem. I calmly assert that I didn't alter anything and adhered to his instructions, managing and paying everything due. As the realization of why Charles is angry dawns on me, a grin widens on my face. I'm glad he's not here to witness it. Charles, incredulous, questions the financial aspects, asking how much I earned. I recall never revealing my salary details to him. $45,000 take home. I respond. Charles reacts with a sound akin to a squashed frog before falling silent. In truth, my job in sales at an investment trust company involved a commission-based salary, influenced by the returns generated for investors. Unfortunately, much of it vanished due to Charles' extravagant spending. However, I had wisely invested the inheritance from my parents, bringing in some income. Although not substantial, it covered living expenses. During the property distribution, only William's savings were considered since my parents' inheritance and its earnings were not part of it. Charles, insistent, questions whether the standard of living before marriage was the same. As I press on, he begins to get angrier. In the midst of his tirade, I couldn't help but laugh at his absurd demand. With Charles yelling to keep contributing money to the house, I retort, "You're the one who ruined it. Why should I, no longer a family member, give you money?" I chuckle half-heartedly, and amidst my laughter, I heard something shatter on the other end. Another one of Charles's tantrums. The realization that I no longer had to clean up after his outbursts made me almost wish he would break more. We were strangers now, no longer family or anything remotely close. I urged him not to act like family and advised him to manage his own finances, leaving him just enough to get by. With that, I bid him goodbye and ended the call. I anticipated more calls, but none came. I thought maybe he was remorseful, but it became apparent that wasn't the case. Perhaps he felt ashamed for not being able to make payments and resorted to ordering William and Madison to borrow money from financial institutions, plunging them into further debt. While payments were made, their unwillingness to change their lifestyle perpetuated the cycle of accumulating more debt each month. I learned about this when William pathetically contacted me, even expressing a desire for reconciliation. Furthermore, William proposed cutting ties with Dad and getting back together. However, such a suggestion seemed hypocritical coming from someone who never stood up for me against Charles' harassment. Despite choosing to stay with William, knowing we couldn't have children, he never protected me. Returning to him was not on my agenda. Charles might have felt suffocated, but that was no longer my concern. I wish they understood the consequences of their actions and endured the suffering now. The in-laws struggled with debt, yet they couldn't bring themselves to reduce their lifestyle standards. Charles, now a contract worker with a reduced salary, joined Madison and William in part-time security jobs. It wasn't just Charles. It was also Madison and William, persisting in maintaining their living standards despite being at their limits. I used to be desperate to protect William, but now I lived for myself. At 40, having children might be challenging, but I remained open to the possibility. Before the divorce, waking up felt like a chore, but now I woke up feeling refreshed, eagerly anticipating a better future in my new life. My name is Kelly, and my husband, whom I married 5 years ago, passed away 3 years ago in an accident. He was a kind and compassionate person. I met him through my brother Bob, who had been friends with him since high school, and he used to visit our house often. He was not very tall, had a slightly overweight physique, and was far from being handsome. However, what attracted me to him was his kindness. He noticed small things and would do anything I asked without complaining. Despite his lack of confidence, I loved him just the way he was. One day, as a college student, I confessed my feelings, saying, "I like you, and I want to be in a relationship with you." At that moment, he became flustered, and his face turned bright red. That's how I won his heart, and we decided to get married at the age of 25. We had happy days together, and having someone who looked only at me and loved only me made me feel blessed. I thought it would last forever, but then a sudden accident shattered everything. The times without him were painful, leading me into a dark world. No matter how much time passed, my tears never dried, and I cried every day. If my brother hadn't reached out to me while watching me suffer, I might have followed him. "Kelly, my restaurant is so busy. I can't handle it. Can you help me?" My brother, who owned a restaurant, had never asked me for help before. But this time, he showed weakness. Looking back now, I thought that helping out at the restaurant might help me recover gradually from the cheerful person I used to be. 3 years passed, and now I find my purpose in working at the restaurant. I bring dishes my brother makes and wash them. It's a life that I could never have imagined when I was working as an office clerk in a company. More and more customers are coming to see my smile. "I don't understand what's so good about that ugly smile of yours, but it must be doing something right for me," my brother said, laughing. His words, though harsh, had warmth to them. One day, a female college student came into the restaurant. She ordered but looked around the restaurant, particularly focusing on the kitchen. Wondering if she's a fan of my brother's dishes, I went to her table when she called. She said it was delicious and placed a white piece of paper on the table. "Please don't show this to the kitchen," she said, and left. Curious, I opened the paper after she left. It only had one sentence written on it: "Your husband's lover. Take responsibility for the pregnancy." Confused and shocked, I couldn't understand the meaning of those words. A pregnancy with the person who passed away 3 years ago. When was this even? She looked about 20 years old. If it was a love affair, it must have been 3 years ago, so when she was 17 in high school. I couldn't imagine my husband getting involved with a high school student. He, who loved only me, would never do such a thing. Besides, even when he saw high school girls, he would just laugh and say they were kids. Words like sugar daddy were frequently used and had become issues. Upon hearing that, he would say, "I wonder how people can do this with high school students. Oh, but men like younger women, right?" I intentionally steered the conversation towards his true feelings. "Young? Well, some people might be into that, but I can't imagine it. High school students are just that, high school students. I only see them as kids. I'm only interested in Kelly, and I don't think youth means anything. What matters is looking at the person right in front of you. Anyway, why does something like this happen? It's foolish, isn't it? It won't lead to a real romantic relationship." I was relieved by my husband's words. This man won't betray me. It will be all right for sure. So I will continue to love only him. I will support him and savor the happiness of the present. However, what does this note mean? At night, after closing the shop, I consulted with my brother. I was given something like this. My brother took the note I handed over and laughed foolishly. "What's this about a lover? That's impossible. How could someone who passed away 3 years ago have a lover? Aren't you getting worked up over something absurd? But it's just a silly prank." The person who left it was probably a student in her 20s. Maybe it was meant as a joke. But there's no way he would do something like this, right? Certainly, he was head over heels for you. So when she comes next time, why not ask her directly? Find out her intentions behind this prank, clean his name. Yeah, that's a good idea. As my brother suggested, it could be resolved by simply asking her. There's no way something like this could be true. Several days passed, but the woman I thought would come again never showed up. Although I was concerned about the note, I had no idea who she was or where she came from, so I thought it might end as a prank. However, just when I decided to forget about it, the phone at the shop rang. Hello? I answered cheerfully, but the caller was a young woman. Instinctively, I thought, is this the same woman from before, and gripped the receiver tightly. Did you read my note? I could hear a sly laugh in her voice, an unpleasant laugh. Yes, I saw it, but I don't understand what it means. Was it a prank or a tasteless joke? That's why I wrote it. I'm your husband's lover. I got pregnant by your husband. That's impossible. Can you tell me more about it? Details, you say. Can your mind handle it? Yes, I'll be fine. My husband would never do something like that. My husband would never cheat. He loves only me. No way. Why do you think that men are all the same? In the end, they slide into reality. Your husband betrayed you. Why don't you accept that reality? You've been betrayed. There's no way something like that could happen. What she's saying is wrong. I know that, but I don't know how to make her understand it. That's what I don't understand. When did this happen? And if it's true, what about the child? They should have been born long ago and be 3 years old, right? Huh. What are you talking about? That's impossible. Your husband got me pregnant, so I'm pregnant now. That's strange. My husband would never do something like that. What? Happy about it? Are you some kind of pervert being happy that your husband is cheating on you? No, it's not like that. But the idea of him cheating is just impossible, you know. I understand that, but I'm pregnant with your husband's child. This fact can't be changed. You're misunderstanding something. I think you should talk to someone else, not me. Why should I? I know it was your husband. He's having an affair with me, so it's only natural that I'm pregnant. Then where did you meet? I was working part-time at a store your husband used to come there. He was a customer. Yes, he used to come every day and persistently ask me out. No matter how many times I declined, he kept insisting. I went out with him reluctantly. In the end, when did this happen? Does it matter when? Within the past 3 years, of course. That's unbelievable. You've got the wrong person. My husband. I'm not mistaken. Your husband had your photo on his phone. Certainly, he would have my photo if it were mine, but it's impossible. If something like this were true, I would want to meet him again. Well, if that's true, I'm actually happy. Huh? What are you talking about? Are you going crazy because your husband cheated on you? No, it's not that. But it happened within the past 3 years, right? That's right. Could you tell me when it happened? Why are you so persistent? 6 months ago. 6 months. I looked at my brother. He was also laughing, saying, if that's true, then it's a ghost. A woman impregnated by a ghost is quite something. You seem quite relaxed about it. Thanks to being impregnated by your husband, my life has gone haywire. What are you going to do about it? Why would you say that? My husband passed away 3 years ago. Huh? Are you trying to make up such a lie to escape? I'm not trying to escape. It's the truth. He passed away in an accident 3 years ago. This is a fact. I can't believe such a thing. Could you be mistaken for someone else? There's no way. I've been to your store, and I've seen your husband in person. I wouldn't mistake someone I like. Is he really my husband? Yes, we work together, don't we? I thought for a moment. The only 2 men I work with are my brother and employee Tom. How old is this person? Around 30. Is he slim or on the heavier side? He's slim, tall, and quite handsome, I think. You're wasting your chances with him. I looked at the 2 men in the kitchen. Tom was tall but on the heavier side, while my brother was tall, slim, and, I hate to admit it, quite handsome. So the woman who visited the store and saw the kitchen probably mistook my brother for my husband. But I couldn't imagine my brother getting involved with such a young girl. Still, I had a feeling this woman wouldn't admit her mistake even if I told her. Which university do you attend? Huh? Why do I have to tell you that? If you want him to take responsibility as my husband's lover, shouldn't you reveal your identity? As long as you provide the money, that's enough. I just need the money to raise this child. Why? I wonder. What do you mean? If you claim to be his lover, shouldn't you talk to him directly instead of calling his wife? I can't do that. It would cause him trouble. I can't inconvenience him like that. By telling me all of this, you're already causing him a great deal of trouble, don't you think? That's just an inconvenience for you, not for him. When you separate from your spouse, what do you think will happen? By that time, he'll probably come to me. So, you want to marry him? Marriage? I'm not thinking about that at all. Anyway, if you give me the money, I won't interfere with your marriage. If he's happy being with you as a couple now, I won't ruin his family. That's quite a generous approach. Or I could consider having an abortion, but I'd still need money for that. How much are you asking for? 1 million. 1 million? Yes, 1 million. If you give me that much, I'll forget about you two as a couple. In that case, can you come to the store tomorrow at 3 o'clock? Will you have the money ready? Yes, I'll prepare for it. But this is only if what you're saying is true. I can't agree to this kind of conversation over the phone during business hours. If I go there at 3 o'clock tomorrow, he won't be there, right? Why not? Wouldn't it be better if he was there? You can have a proper conversation with him. If you don't talk to him face to face, you won't know if the child in your belly is really his. I'm sure he'd be delighted. You're insane. It's a child from your husband's affair. The child is innocent, isn't it? If it's true, it is true. Well then, I'll give you the opportunity to talk to him. That's not necessary. Why not? Because if I did that, it would cause him trouble. It's cruel to meet his lover in front of his wife, isn't it? Oh, I think he'd be pleased. After all, it's a relationship that resulted in having a child. No, I want to talk to you, not him. Why are you so stubborn? Well, fine then, if that's what you want. Anyway, come tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Got it? And please don't tell him anything. I hung up without saying yes or I understand. Then, my brother and Tom looked at me. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. So what was it all about? It turns out it's one of the guys from this store. Then employee Tom shook his head. That's not me. I have a wife, you know. Huh, Tom, you're married? Yes, to a 2D wife. I'm dedicated to her. Oh, I see. Indeed, for an anime enthusiast like Tom, real-life women were probably out of the question. My brother also denied it entirely. I'm not interested in students. I prefer ripe fruits over green ones. You're saying all that, but basically you're into mature women, right? Well, you could say that. But judging from the appearance of the woman, it seems she's more into someone like your brother. Huh, manager, did you have an affair with a girl? Hey, stop it. Well, it doesn't seem like that either way. But one thing's for sure, it's not my husband. So, what are you going to do? She mentioned tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Yeah, I told her to come at 3 o'clock tomorrow. She asked for 1 million, right? Yeah, she did. She demanded 1 million while talking about taking responsibility. But there's no way I have that kind of money. That's strange. Is this some kind of money-focused scam? Yeah, I think so too. Plus, the fact that she refuses to meet her supposed affair partner is just not adding up. Yeah, if you think about it normally, as a lover, you want to talk it out with the other person. Refusing to meet someone you supposedly like is hard to believe. This person needs to be exposed for who they really are. You can even file charges for fraud or defamation. True, but I don't really want to go that far with a girl. Is that so? I think she should face the consequences. She should learn from the pain and never do it again. If we involve the police, her life will be in ruins. That's just pitiful, Kelly. You're kind. I believe he would say, hate the sin, not the sinner. Yeah, he would probably say that. So, I didn't want to push her too hard. If possible, I wanted to resolve this peacefully. I want to make her realize that what she's doing is wrong. If I can do that, I believe she'll be saved, and so will I. My husband would understand my intentions. The next day arrived, and we closed the shop temporarily to wait for 3 o'clock. After taking the short break, we would usually open the restaurant in time for dinner. However, today we didn't have the luxury of taking our time. My brother Tom and I were all waiting exactly at 3 o'clock. The door to the shop opened, and a woman walked in. She claimed to be pregnant, but there was no sign of a protruding belly. My brother and Tom were hiding in the shadows of the kitchen, watching us. I invited the woman in and served her a cup of coffee, even though she shouldn't be drinking it if she's pregnant. Please have some coffee to calm down. The woman didn't hesitate and took a sip of the coffee. I knew it. She's not really pregnant. Her belly isn't showing, and this just doesn't seem like a pregnant woman. Is this cheap coffee? You're being stingy. Poor guy deserves better. I'm sorry about that. This isn't a coffee specialty shop, so have you prepared the 1 million? 1 million? Huh? Why do you think I can just come up with that kind of money? Why not? You said you have it ready yesterday. Well, I did say that, but I didn't promise to have it ready. Besides, it's not easy to come up with such a large sum of money. Why not? Your restaurant is always so crowded. I know how many customers you have. True, thankfully, we have many customers. But you see, this isn't my shop. I'm just an employee here. No way, it's not a lie. Why are you lying to protect your husband like this? It's not like that. I just find it strange that you're claiming to be my husband. What's so strange about it? All right then, let's meet my husband, shall we? I told you I don't want to meet him. All right. I placed a photo of him on the table that I had brought from home. What is this? My husband. He passed away 3 years ago, my beloved husband. No, if you claim to be my lover, that would mean we were dating 3 years ago, right? In that case, you were in high school. Are high school students dating 28 or 29-year-old men? But the style you were describing yesterday seems quite different. My husband isn't skinny, and he's not handsome either. So, is this person really your lover? No, it's not like that. It's not him at all. Stop lying. You work in the kitchen here. To go to such lengths, you're a truly terrible woman. Then it seems my husband's lover is someone else. My husband is the only person like this person, but he works together here. That's right. Bob, Tom, come out, please. When the two of them came out of the kitchen, the woman pointed at my brother and exclaimed, "This one, he's your husband." Oh, was it me? I've never played with you. But if you love me so much that you want to imagine a pregnancy, should we start dating now? I'm not married either, and it might just be perfect. My brother laughed and put his arm around the woman's shoulders. The woman, who had just spoken to someone for the first time and was subjected to such treatment, had a twisted expression on her face. Meanwhile, Tom took her bag and pulled out her student ID from inside it. Well, your name is Anna, right? You go to the university, which is pretty close by. Hey, give it back. Don't take things out of someone's bag like a thief. Easy there. You were trying to extort money from me with lies about pregnancy and 1 million. You were attempting fraud and slandering Kelly's husband. Now you want it back. Give it back. Why did you do something like this? If you tell the truth, I'll get it back to you. Well, if you don't tell me, I'll expose you to the university. Is that okay? I did it because I liked you. I lied because I liked you. Give it back. I told you so. It's fine. It was clear that it was a desperate lie to get out of the situation. But if she said she did it because she told the truth, there was no choice but to give it back. Here you go. The woman snatched the student ID card that Tom had handed her and put it in her bag. Anna, if you like me that much, do you want to date from now on? Exclusive to hotels. Stop it. She responded seriously to her brother's joke, broke, and left the store with her face all red. I see, was it because you liked me? There's no way it was like that. It was just a lie to get out of the situation. Well, it's okay. The manager seems happy, but why did you do something like this? I'll look into it. You can't investigate something like this, can you? Don't underestimate me. I may look like this now, but I used to be in a special unit during my free days. A special unit. From just one photo, we can find out everything about the person, from their address to their school, home, and family composition. And if there's something I can't figure out on my own, I can ask my friends from the special unit, and they'll catch it faster than the police. I see. That's kind of scary in a way. So, I'll investigate it right away, Tom said with a smile on his face. In less than 2 days, Tom told her a lot of information. But the more she heard, the more ridiculous it seemed. In other words, it was all because of that woman's selfishness. It made her angry to think that her husband had been slandered for such a thing. But this solved everything. Even if the woman came again, there were plenty of ways to deal with her. Moreover, since she had already said that she liked her brother, she decided it was best to leave it to her brother, after all. After all the embarrassment she went through, she probably won't come again, Tom said with a smile. Both she and her brother agreed on that point. Even if she did come again, she wouldn't be in her right mind. However, 3 days later, the woman unexpectedly showed up. As soon as she entered the store, she pointed her smartphone screen at her. You're the one who did this, right? Huh? What do you mean by this? This? She showed her the screen. On it, it said that Anna, a student at my university, had pretended to be pregnant and tried to scam 1 million. It even detailed her passionate affair with a my university professor and the reality of her sugar daddy activities, as well as the fact that her 1 million debt was due to cosmetic surgery. Is this true? It's true, and I'm in trouble because of it. It's because you posted this. I didn't do anything. I didn't tell anyone else except you. Who else would know about this? Pretending to be a mistress, getting pregnant, and then demanding 1 million. Who else would know about that? But I really didn't know. I don't even use social media. Then who did it? Because of this article. I'm being told to drop out of university. Oh, that's tough. It's more than tough. Even the university professor who used to be my sugar daddy is avoiding me because he's afraid of getting involved with me. How many people were you in that kind of relationship with? It's for the money. You mean you spent money on plastic surgery? I need money for my cosmetic surgery to maintain this face. But how could you do this to me? If I run out of money, my face will start to deteriorate. That's scary. So it's your fault. Take down this article. Take down all of this. Even if you asked me to take it down, it wasn't me who posted it, so there's nothing I can do. Why not? I just did it to pay off the debt I incurred from my cosmetic surgery. Wait a minute. Did you frame my husband to pay off the debt from cosmetic surgery? That's right. But in the end, your husband was already dead, so there was nothing I could do. I thought he was the manager because he was close to you. That's a bit, considering what you did to my husband. This is unavoidable. But I didn't do it? That's right, Anna. Kelly didn't do anything. Maybe someone was watching. In this day and age with advanced technology, you never know who's watching and where. Besides, you should be grateful that it ended with just this. In reality, you could be charged with defamation and fraud against Kelly's husband. And that wouldn't be surprising. Why would it be defamation against a person? You can still be charged with defamation against the deceased. You're a university student, so you should have that much knowledge. If you keep making a scene here, your story will spread on social media again. What did you do? Look around you. When she looked around, the customers who should have been eating were all pointing their smartphones at Anna. It was probably a video. It was clear that they were planning to publish a follow-up article. This is terrible. Because of this article, I have to drop out of university, and I don't even know what will happen to my job. She shouted and quickly left the store. She ran away. But who on earth would write such an article? I wonder who it could be. Tom was laughing, but he said, in reality, you're doing something that could get you arrested by the police. It's fortunate that you didn't get caught. That's probably why you're getting your just desserts. He said, And when he returned to the kitchen, he laughed and said, "I surprisingly understand it," and raised his thumb. After that, Anna reportedly quit the university. She cried and exposed the truth in the store, and the articles started to spread rapidly on social media again, revealing her attempted fraud. Her friends were disgusted with her, and all the people who had been her friends left her. She even broke up with her boyfriend at the time, and in no time at all, she lost everything. Unable to find work, she fell into the nightclub scene. However, even there, she was looked down upon because of the social media articles, and customers who approached her thinking she was an easy target quickly got tired of her. Harassed by her colleagues, she finally left the job. In the end, she couldn't find a job and faced daily scolding from her parents, which took a toll on her mental health. She couldn't work and couldn't go outside. All she had waiting for her was a deteriorating appearance and a dark room. On the other hand, as for me, I continue to work at my brother's restaurant. Customers who look forward to my smile often ask me out, and I've been dating a man with a similar build to my late husband, enjoying our dates. My brother, on the other hand, seems to be considering dating college girls as he's engrossed in some strange websites, and our employee, Tom, is deeply immersed in his 2D wife. Our restaurant, as bustling as ever, fills the air with delicious scents, waiting for customers. Did the items for Jane and Hannah arrive? Starting today, we're going to be supporting them, my husband Bob declared triumphantly over the phone. I was at a loss for words due to Bob's sudden declaration. It seemed like Jane and Hannah were the only ones on his mind, with no consideration for me. I contemplated discarding such a husband. Yeah, the stuff arrived, and I just moved into a new place. I responded in a deliberately cheerful tone. "A new place?" Bob muttered, then seemed stunned. "My name is Caroline Smith, and I recently turned 50. I work in sales at a major company, and although the job comes with constant complaints and troubles from clients, it's rewarding and enjoyable. My only family is my husband Bob. We don't have children, and my parents passed away some time ago. My parents-in-law live nearby, but we aren't that close. We have a casual relationship. Bob loves dining out, often taking his sister Jane along for many outings. Jane's daughter, Hannah, always joins them. In the early stages of our marriage, I complained to Bob about him prioritizing Jane and her daughter over me. However, those feelings gradually faded. I want to repay them for the struggles I caused during my student days. After learning of Bob's sincere feelings, I understood that my in-laws are impoverished, living in a small, run-down apartment. It's incredibly cramped. Bob diligently pursued his studies, but he didn't pass his first-choice state university, only getting accepted into private ones. His parents couldn't afford to pay, so Jane, who was working at the time, helped with his tuition. Bob seems grateful to Jane for supporting him during difficult times. After Jane got married, she quit her job to be a stay-at-home mom, limiting her financial resources. After hearing this story, I stopped complaining, understanding the reasons for wanting to give back. I thought it best to let Bob do as he pleases, despite a bit of loneliness. "I'm going to go out to eat with Jane and Hannah now," Bob said. Bob is going to dine out with Jane and her daughter today as well. "Have a good time," I said with a smile, seeing him off. Let's continue to live supporting each other with Bob, who values family. That's what I thought. However, the rift in our relationship happened about 3 months ago. One day, Bob approached with a serious expression, saying, "In fact, Jane's getting a divorce. She's decided to keep custody of Hannah." When I heard Jane was divorcing, I was honestly perplexed. Jane was the type of person I found difficult to deal with, going back to when I visited Bob's parents' house before we got married. Jane laughed uproariously at me, saying, "Bob, you're marrying her? She's so plain and has bad taste." Bob and his parents didn't say a word, acting like they didn't notice. So I had no choice but to endure Jane's rude behavior as I remembered Bob's declaration. "I'm going to visit home every day for a while. Unlike you, who's thick-skinned, Jane is delicate. And I'm worried about Hannah too. Bob disparaged me with a calm demeanor. However, I did not retort. Arguing with Bob here and then, having him perpetually visit his parents' house would also be a problem. Take care. I couldn't say anything else and just saw Bob off. From then on, Bob spent more time away from home. Until now, he often came home around 8 p.m. on weekdays, but there were times when he didn't return even by the next morning. He was almost never home on weekends, and my loneliness just grew. When I returned from work and called out, there was no response at all, and the room was pitch dark. He must be at his parents' house again. With Bob's absence, I often found myself downhearted. However, when Bob was home, he began to annoy me more and more. That day, Bob was uncharacteristically at home, but he made an unthinkable request of me. Jane told me you haven't given a housewarming gift yet. You're so stingy. You're getting a bonus soon, right? Buy her a designer bag or something, Bob said, as if I must do so. A housewarming gift? Why do I have to give one? Why don't you do it, Bob? I responded in kind, but Bob instantly got angry. You married into this family, so Jane's your family too, isn't she? Don't you think it's ill-mannered not to even be able to do a simple thing like giving a gift to family? Bob berated me. The lecture from Bob went on for about an hour. In the end, he only said, anyway, just make sure to give Jane and Hannah a gift before leaving the house. He's likely gone to his parents' house. I've never received anything from Jane, I murmured quietly. A few days later, I got a call from Jane. Hello, you heard from Bob, didn't you? You really don't think things through. Normally, you give a housewarming gift, Jane stated as if she deserved it. I got irritated at the selfish attitude, so I retaliated. You've never done anything for us either, have you? Even at our wedding, we didn't get a gift from you. During the wedding, Jane said with a smile, We're family, so we don't need a wedding gift, right? And handed over an empty gift envelope. But there's nothing inside, is there? I asked. Even when I asked, Jane put on an innocent face. I did buy the envelope, right? I'm so nice, aren't I? Jane said with full confidence. I was at a loss for words at Jane's utter lack of common sense, and Jane had absolutely no restraint. She heartily ate the wedding meal and drank several drinks outside of the course. Even when I handed Jane the catalog gift for the guests, she complained, Aren't there any luxurious items? If there were, I could take home several. Caroline, you really don't think things through. That was the outcome, with her complaining like that. Remembering all that, Jane replied with a scoff, You're my brother's wife. I don't need to give you anything, do I? You're the lowest in our family hierarchy. Rather, it's only natural for you to honor me. If you understand, go buy a new designer bag quickly. I was astounded at the way Jane spoke, unable to say anything. Hannah strikes up a conversation. Caroline, make sure you buy my bag too. It has to be the one exclusive to the Fifth Avenue store, or I won't forgive you. Bye, Hannah. Laughing loudly with a ha-ha-ha. Hung up just like that. Unbelievable. Why am I the only one who has to endure this? I heaved a big sigh. After that, Bob just stopped coming home. Whenever he did come back, he would take money from my wallet without any regard for my desperate attempts to stop him. You're always at home, so you're not going to use the money, right? I'll use it for something worthwhile. Be grateful. Waving a few bills, Bob left the house. I couldn't take this anymore. I was becoming worn out from Bob's selfish actions. Then one day, the doorbell rang, and I opened the front door. Hello, I said, and someone who appeared to be a mover said, Is this the residence of Mr. Bob Smith? We'll start moving the stuff right away, and began bringing a multitude of boxes into the house. I hurriedly tried to stop him, saying, Wait a minute, we didn't order this. However, the mover responded with a slight troubled look. It's Mr. Bob Smith's residence, right? We received a request directly from him. Perplexed by the mover's reply, I immediately called Bob. Fortunately, Bob answered right away. In the background of the call, I could hear the crude laughter of what seemed to be Jane and Hannah. I confronted Bob. There are movers here bringing box after box into our house. What's going on? Then Bob said something completely unexpected. Oh, did the stuff for Jane and Hannah arrive? From today, we're going to be supporting them. I don't need your opinion, got it? Bob declared triumphantly over the phone. In the background, Jane started to speak. Welcome aboard. Since you don't have kids, you must be thrilled to take care of our Hannah, right? Be grateful. Hannah voiced her displeasure with a tinge of offense. What? This old lady is going to be like a parent? So embarrassing. I can't tell my friends. I was at a loss for words due to Bob's sudden declaration. Surely the in-laws' house must have become too cramped, prompting Jane to plead with him. Our house is bigger and has spare rooms. No doubt they were requested by Jane and Hannah, who knew about this. It seemed like Bob only had Jane and Hannah on his mind. There was not a shred of consideration for me. I might as well discard such a husband. I made up my mind as I remained silent. Bob continued to issue orders. Additional baggage will arrive in a week. I bought new furniture for Jane and Hannah online, so make sure to get things sorted out. We'll stay at our parents' place until then. We can't live in a room scattered with boxes. Bob said so with a laugh. Hey, isn't this too pitiful for Caroline? She has to sort out our stuff all by herself. Jane was also snickering. It's our precious belongings. Handle them with care. Hannah had the audacity to demand. I wanted to hang up this call so badly. All right. I simply said that and immediately hung up the phone. Right after hanging up the phone, I swiftly sprang into action. A week later, Bob called again. Did the additional baggage arrive? Did you tidy up the room properly? Bob probably wants to know the current state of the house. He seemed somewhat anxious. Unable to calm down, so I smiled sweetly. Yep, the stuff arrived. And I just moved into a new place. I responded in a deliberately cheerful tone. Ha, a new place. Bob muttered and then was stunned. In fact, on the day Jane and Hannah's belongings first arrived, I promptly sprang into action and headed to a local real estate agent, directly negotiating to find a place to live. Initially, they declined, stating it was impossible, as most places require renovations before moving in or have handover procedures, meaning you can't move in on the same day. However, after checking with several agents, I was introduced to a women-only shared housing. It came with automatic locks, providing a safe environment for women to live in. The bathroom, toilet, and kitchen were shared, and electricity and gas were already set up, allowing for immediate use. Additionally, a cleaning service came regularly, making it a well-thought-out housing option. Since it was furnished, minimal luggage would not be a problem. According to the real estate agent, there was just one room available. I'd like to see the room right away. I immediately requested from the agent. They took me to view it straight away. And just by taking one look inside the room, I decided I'll take it. When I shared this story, Bob was visibly shaken, even over the phone. Moving out on your own is utterly unreasonable, isn't it? We're a married couple. Apologize to me right now and come home, Bob scolded me. Jane, perhaps shaken, hysterically asked, What's happening with our room? Hannah too yelled angrily, Don't mess with us, old hag. Wang didn't rebut. Bob said, as if he thought of something clever, Do you think it's okay to do such a selfish thing? If we get divorced, you'll be the one in trouble, you know. That's right. With your age and looks, you won't find another suitor in the future, right? You're just a plain old lady. Your future is looking pretty bleak. How pitiful. Serves you right, Jane said, sounding rather pleased. In the background over the phone, Hannah was laughing and saying, The old lady's done for. At that moment, Bob said, sounding smug, If you apologize to us sincerely from now on, I'll forgive you. Unlike you, we're kind after all, he snorted through his nose, laughing. In the background of the call, Jane and Hannah were shouting in agreement, so I decided to set the record straight. Actually, Bob should be the one apologizing, don't you think? I know about the affair you're having. Bob was visibly shaken. The truth is, Bob had been cheating for over 3 months. The other woman was a colleague from his workplace. How did you find out? I thought I'd been utterly discreet. Bob asked, his voice trembling with fear. He must have been so sure he wouldn't get caught, so it wasn't surprising he reacted that way. Being the kind-hearted person that I am, I decided to tell him. I hired a private investigator just in case, because you've hardly been home, right? I thought maybe you were cheating. Good thing I trusted my instincts, and since Bob stayed silent, I just kept on going. I was shocked when the PI got back to me. They finished the investigation in 3 days. You were seeing her every day, huh? Those meals out with Jane and Hannah were only on your days off, it seems, I said, laughing. According to the PI's findings, Bob had been gallivanting around with his mistress every day after work. The money he'd likely been taking from my wallet must have been for her. Bob and his mistress were often close together, making it easy for the PI to get good pictures. I'm going to divorce you, Bob, and I'll be demanding alimony, and, of course, from your colleague, the mistress as well. Expect a certified letter at your office. Smirking at Bob after receiving the PI's results, I headed straight to a law firm. Even the lawyers seemed rather taken aback by the conclusive evidence I presented. How dare you? Bob spat out, clearly irate. When a certified letter arrives at the company, even without opening it, they'll probably have a pretty good idea of what's going on. It's not just going to Bob, but to his mistress at the same company. Surely, everyone at the office will find out about their affair. Hey, Bob, are you okay? The situation has taken a dark turn, and Jane sounded anxious. Jane must have been planning to have Bob and me take care of life's chores for her, intending to lead a leisurely life. Jane has a long history of being a housewife, and it's unlikely she can start working now. Bob is the only one to rely on, and it can't be helped, I guess. Bob, what are you going to do? I haven't worked a day since graduating from high school, and there's no way I'm doing a part-time job now. Hannah seems slightly troubled as well. Even when Jane and Hannah blame him, Bob remains silent, unable to say anything. I delivered a further blow to Bob. Bob, you probably haven't saved any money, have you? It said in the investigation report that you've been generously spending on your mistress, even bought her the new designer handbag. Maybe you're in debt too. I dropped a bomb, and whether Bob is shaken up, he can't find the words. Ignoring him, Jane is yelling at him. What? You don't buy them for me. But why did you get them for your mistress? Are you kidding me? Plus debt? How much do you owe? I hate you, Bob. Even though I begged so much, you never bought me anything. Hannah also scolds Bob in a high-pitched voice. On the other side of the phone, Jane and Hannah are noisily complaining. Caroline, I really am sorry, so please handle these two somehow. Bob pleaded with me in an exhausted voice. But I have no intention of forgiving Bob. Why don't you deal with it yourself? I'm not involved, and it's what you deserve. Better tell your mistress soon. If you dilly-dally, a certified mail will reach your company, you know? I said to Bob with a smirk. Damn, Bob seemed frustrated. Ignoring such a Bob, I spoke. Well then, do your best, and please give me plenty of alimony. I hung up the phone right there. After hanging up, there were several calls from Bob, but I ignored them. Let Bob and Jane struggle as much as they want. I muttered quietly and set Bob's contact to block incoming calls. After that, my divorce with Bob was finalized. Initially, Bob resisted because there was dual income. Until now, Bob could afford to live even while he just messed around. With just Bob's income, maintaining the lifestyle we've had until now is certainly not feasible. It seems like Bob understands that, which is why he doesn't want to divorce me. However, I have decisive evidence of Bob's infidelity. Ultimately, I conveyed to him that I have absolutely no intention of reconciling, and that I will take legal action if he doesn't agree to the divorce any longer. With that, Bob, hanging his head down, said, I'll agree to the divorce, and stamped the divorce papers. So I demanded alimony from Bob in settlement for emotional damage from his partner. The amount was determined while being informed about the going rate from my lawyer. I believe it's a fair amount. In fact, Bob's partner paid it promptly. Apparently, she borrowed it from her parents after explaining the situation. However, it was a steep amount for Bob. Can it be reduced? Even though he said that numerous times, I ultimately rejected Bob's request during the meeting with our lawyers at the law office. How about I add on the money you stole from my wallet? I cheerfully asked. Bob turned pale as a ghost. That amount is fine. In the end, Bob, trembling, agreed. After that, both Bob and his partner resigned from their company. The reason was that their affair was exposed within the company. It seems that the delivery of a certified document brought attention to the relationship between the two. Even if the contents of the envelope were unknown, an envelope from a divorce law office tends to be pretty self-explanatory. One can generally guess what's inside. Eventually, Bob resigned because things got uncomfortable. Being the subject of juicy gossip around the office, perhaps he couldn't stand it. After leaving the company, Bob has been working in day labor via an agency. Due to his age, it seems he couldn't find another job right away, but payments won't wait. He has living expenses plus the installment payments of alimony to me, and the mortgage still has a long way to go. Moreover, the debts he likely incurred during his affair came to light. Life's probably going to be pretty tough, I bet. Sometimes I get messages from Bob through the lawyer to me. I was wrong. Please take me back. I'm begging you. I'm barely scraping by. If I'd known this would happen, I would have been nicer to Caroline, Bob says, reportedly weeping in front of the lawyer. I think he's really backed into a corner, but it's too late now. And the situation for Jane and Hannah doesn't look good either. Currently, they are living with Bob, but since Bob has no money, their living situation seems dire. One day, I got a message from Jane on my cell. I had blocked Bob's number, but I hadn't blocked Jane's. Seems like that backfired. Wondering what she could possibly want now, I answered the call. Hello, and the moment I answered, Jane begged me, please help us. We're living with Bob, but he has no money, and our electricity and gas are going to be shut off. We don't even have anything left to eat, Jane spoke in an exhausted voice. I was surprised that their living situation had become so desperate. But I had no intention of helping, so I brushed Jane off coldly. Why don't you work? You're healthy, aren't you, Jane? You used to work back in the day, right? Then Hannah, presumably next to Jane, spoke up. Caroline, isn't that harsh? You're working at a major company. You wrangled money out of Bob and his affair partner, so you must have some financial leeway, right? So you have a duty to support Mom and me. If you tell us your address, we'll come there. Take care of us. Hannah apparently has no intention of working even now. It's truly exasperating considering she's still young. Biting back a sigh, I conveyed my stance. Now that I'm divorced from Bob, I'm a complete stranger to you, Hannah. I have no intention of supporting you, and I don't want anything more to do with you. Don't call me again. As soon as I finished speaking, Hannah shouted, Don't mess with me, you old hag. You should just quietly take care of us. Tell us your address right now. After that, they kept shrieking for quite a while. Their characters will likely never change for the rest of their lives. I have nothing to do with this anymore. Goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone. I immediately blocked Jane's number. I never want to deal with them again. In their current state, they will likely face more hardship, but it's their own laziness that brought this upon them. I think it's fine if they continue to suffer. A year later, I decided to move out of the shared housing. It's a bit sad to leave where I made friends. The reason I'm leaving this fun and lively place is because I decided to adopt a dog. I met the dog at an adoption event a dog-loving friend invited me to, and I went along. That's where I had a destiny-filled encounter. While other dogs were being friendly with various people, this dog was different. It stared at me intently the moment our eyes met. I thought this dog might need me. After that, I attended the adoption events many times and deepened my bond with him. After several visits, joyfully, I was allowed to adopt him. However, the shared housing doesn't allow pets, so sadly, I had to move out. Now I live in a pet-friendly apartment. Dogs don't betray you, and it's so cute when I call. He runs towards me joyfully. There will probably be various difficulties in the future, but I'm not alone anymore. I want to move forward, facing forward, supporting each other with this beloved dog. This is where my parents live, Mark declared suddenly upon his visit. Behind him, his in-laws nodded happily. I found myself in the middle of an online meeting and quickly apologized to the other party before ending the call. Irritated, I turned my gaze towards the door. "Why did you come all of a sudden?" I asked them, maintaining my composure. My father-in-law proudly replied, "We'll pay off the mortgage, so please leave." It was hard to suppress a laugh at his statement. My mother-in-law had never worked, and my father-in-law was just staying at home without any employment. Yet Mark was completely in favor of his parents' opinion. Disappointed by his stance, I considered divorce. "I leave," I quickly replied, to the surprise of all three of them. "The mortgage of the house is $5,000 per month." With an inward smile, I began to pack seriously. Luckily, I had a business trip scheduled for a week starting for the next day. With my suitcase and bank book ready, I headed to the entrance. "Goodbye," I said as I left the house. First, I'd start by transferring the house's title to Mark. I felt excited thinking about my future plans. My name is Shyle Owen. I am 47 years old and work as a web designer. I went independent 5 years ago and have been fortunate enough to receive many project checks. As a result, I've earned more than 5 times my previous salary and now live on the top floor of a high-rise condo. I met Mark, my husband, 3 years ago through Ashley, my former boss, and his cousin. He's kind and honest, but had trouble maintaining relationships, so he had been single for a long time. Around that time, my business was doing well, and I bought the top floor of a high-rise condo, doubling as an office. I wasn't planning on marrying, but Ashley strongly suggested I meet Mark. When I met him, he was very gentle and attractive, looking much younger than his actual age. We started dating and got engaged within 6 months. My parents had already passed away, and my only relative was my brother. So my brother and his wife also attended the family meeting. From Mark's side, his parents and cousin Ashley came. The meeting went smoothly overall. However, my sister-in-law's comment, "This seems stiff," left me puzzled. I never imagined her words would become a reality. After marrying, Mark moved into my house, and we started our life together. His workplace was harsh, requiring him to leave early in the morning and return home past midnight. Despite this, his salary was only a quarter of mine. I suggested to Mark, who was exhausted and went to sleep immediately every day, "It's bad for your health. Why don't you look for another job?" However, he reprimanded me with a face full of anger. "Are you saying I should quit my job? Are you looking down on me because I earn less?" I was surprised by Mark's strong reaction, as we had never argued before. Feeling uncomfortable about unintentionally disrespecting his job, I decided to apologize sincerely. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. I'm just worried about your health." Mark quickly calmed down and apologized. Our first argument ended swiftly. However, it became difficult to suggest a job change afterward. Mark's return time got even later, and he eventually spent half the week at the office. While I was concerned about his health, he seemed to enjoy his job. So I decided to support him as much as I could, creating a relaxing environment whenever he returned home. "Hey, about my dad's medical expenses, could we increase the remittance a bit?" Mark suggested this when his father was in the hospital with back pain. Sighing inwardly at his request in his father's hospital room, I didn't hesitate to help my in-laws, as I had no parents of my own. Our household depended on my income, with Mark contributing a part of his salary to his parents. His salary wasn't low for a man in his 40s, but the exact amount he kept for himself was unclear. However, it was evident he was providing enough for his parents not to struggle. I couldn't agree when he insisted on increasing the remittance because it was possible only due to my income. Yet it was hard to refuse in front of his parents. "Mark, you're really kind. Thank you so much. It's a big help," they said, looking at me and Mark under their pressure. I reluctantly agreed to increase the remittance. Afterward, my in-laws started demanding money for various reasons, not just the remittance. I wanted to refuse, but they knew I would say no, so they approached Mark instead. Especially weak to his mother's requests, Mark often decided to increase the remittance whenever she asked. On the day his father returned from the hospital, after sending my in-laws off in a taxi, Mark and I returned home, only to find surprisingly that his parents, who were supposed to have gone home, were waiting outside our house. It's tough for Dad to climb our stairs, so I thought we'd take care of him here until his back is fully healed. "What? You can't just spring that on me." My surprised reaction made my mother-in-law frown. My father-in-law stood in front of the door as if to say, "Let us in quickly, Mark." "That's okay, right?" Mark replied, and I stared at him in shock. He avoided my gaze from his reaction. As I observed the situation, it became apparent that Mark and his parents had likely already discussed their plans. "Fine, you can stay here until you're fully recovered." I reluctantly relented, ushering my in-laws inside. They surveyed the house and settled onto the living room sofa. "Look at this place, so nice. Our house is 50 years old and falling apart," remarked my father-in-law. "Yeah, it's really showing its age," agreed my mother-in-law. Mark nodded along, indicating their intention to stay for an extended period. Admittedly, since I had been providing them with financial support, having them here might ease the burden. However, financial considerations aside, it didn't mean I welcomed the idea of cohabiting. Renovating old houses is trendy these days. How about considering that, Mark? I suggested. "Yeah, maybe," Mark replied vaguely. 2 years into our marriage, despite being in the supposed honeymoon phase, Mark and I hardly spent time together. We hadn't even gone on a honeymoon. This place served as both my home and office. It was manageable when Mark was out for work, but with my in-laws around all day, it complicated things. If we were to live together, I'd rather move into their house and reserve this place solely as an office. Thanks to my initial resistance, the topic of cohabitation wasn't brought up again by my in-laws. However, even months after my father-in-law's discharge from the hospital, my mother-in-law showed no sign of taking him back. Their belongings started to overflow from the guest room into the living room. "Mark, your dad seems perfectly healthy now. He even went bowling today. Maybe it's time for them to go home," I suggested. "What are you saying? Sending my dad back with his bad back is cruel. What if it gets worse?" Mark raised his voice, leaving me silent. It seemed that Mark believed raising his voice would compel compliance. He frequently asserted his opinions loudly, and opposing him often resulted in my mother-in-law siding with him, putting me at a disadvantage. This dynamic persisted for 2 years. During this time, I took care of all the housework, while my in-laws frequently went out to enjoy themselves. Despite my father-in-law's back being fully healed, there were no signs of them returning home. "Sorry, I have a meeting at 1 p.m. today, so I'll eat lunch in my room, okay?" I informed them as I placed lunch on the table. "Understood, but leave the dishes for later," my mother-in-law replied without looking up. As the clock struck 1 p.m., my online meeting commenced. However, about 10 minutes in, the door burst open, and Mark declared, "This is where me and my parents live." My in-laws nodded behind him. I swiftly apologized to the meeting participants and ended the call, inwardly frustrated. "I told you I had a meeting at 1 p.m., I grumbled as I headed towards the door. "Why are you doing this all of a sudden?" I asked calmly, only to be met with my father-in-law's smug reply, "We'll pay the mortgage so you can leave." Suppressing a laugh at his audacity, I simply replied, "All right, I'll leave," surprising all 3 of them. With the mortgage at $5,000 per month, I couldn't help but smile inwardly at the prospect of moving forward with my plans. I approached the task with a solemn expression, aware of the serious decision I was making. Fortunately, a week-long business trip awaited me starting the next day. Armed with a meticulously packed suitcase and my bank book, I headed for the exit. Goodbye, I uttered, bidding farewell to the home that had become a source of contention. The first order of business was transferring the house title to Mark. Brimming with excitement about the impending changes, I checked into a hotel and promptly contacted a real estate agent to initiate the house transfer, encompassing the mortgage. The success of the transfer rested on Mark's ability to handle the mortgage. If he couldn't manage it, the options were a lump sum payment or selling the house. Accepting this reality, I directed the agent to find me a new home and office. My work could be conducted remotely, but a dedicated office space was crucial for calm client discussions. The agent identified a suitable location approximately 40 minutes from my previous residence, complete with top-notch security. After a visit and quick decision, I bought the luxurious apartment, considering it a well-deserved reward for my efforts. In the interim period before the move, I stayed in temporary accommodation. Once all the necessary documents were prepared, I delegated the packing and moving process to a professional moving company. During the move, my in-laws and Mark assisted while exchanging unpleasant remarks about me. One of the movers even commented, "You have a difficult family," causing a flush of embarrassment. A week after settling into my new abode, I received a call from Mark. His anxious inquiry about changing the mortgage indicated he was just grasping the situation. His father's shouts in the background urged me to return quickly. Despite the divorce being the plan, Mark seemed taken aback. "But we're getting a divorce, right? It's unfair for me to pay the mortgage if you're the ones living there," he protested. However, I couldn't accept his denial after they had explicitly told me to leave the house. I played back our conversation from that day, caught on tape during a web meeting. Mark was startled by my explanation, having forgotten about my practice of recording meetings for documentation purposes. Undeterred, I informed him about the impending mortgage repayments, subject to a credit check. Mark, seemingly unaware of the details, asked about the monthly amount, leading to my laughter. Despite my prior disclosures and document presentations, Mark seemed oblivious to the $5,000 monthly mortgage. Stunned, he remained speechless, prompting his mother to intervene. She questioned the amount and proceeded to assert that Mark's salary could handle it. Unbeknownst to his parents, Mark hadn't disclosed his actual salary, allowing his mother to confidently declare that they wouldn't assist me any longer. In response, I burst into laughter, provoking her anger. Undeterred, I revealed the actual mortgage amount, $4,000. "What? The mortgage is Mark's monthly salary. That's absurd." My words left her shocked and frozen for a moment, but then she burst into laughter. "That's impossible. Mark has been sending us $4,000 every month. If his salary is really $4,000, he would have been sending us all of it. Stop lying," she exclaimed, refusing to believe me. Remaining calm, I pointed her towards the evidence. "Look at the shelf right by the entrance of the living room. You'll find Mark's salary slips there. If you doubt it, check for yourself." She dismissed my explanation, accusing me of lying, and headed to the indicated shelf. In the background, I could hear Mark trying to stop her. Soon, her voice of surprise came through the phone. "What? There's not even $4,000 here, Mark. What's the meaning of this?" Mark's actual salary turned out to be even lower than I knew, and I could hear his in-laws questioning him in the background. "You might not hear me, but just so you know, the house mortgage is $5,000 a month. Take care," I declared as loudly as possible. Whether they heard me or not, I ended the call. Mark called again several times later, but I ignored them all. "Let's discuss this through a lawyer from now on," I texted him, and then ignored any further communication. The lawyer I hired dealt with frequent contacts in the following days, which soon quieted down. I promptly filed for compensation through my lawyer. After a while, A response came through my lawyer, and I couldn't help but laugh at its contents. It seemed to be co-authored by a team of liars from Mark's side. Their claims were laughable. The allegations by Shelley are false, and the real victim is our client. We demand compensation for emotional distress, it read. All I could say to my lawyer was, I'm sorry. The divorce was nearing, but our relationship as a couple was still ongoing. I wanted to get away from a husband who could make such demands. My client wants to meet and discuss in person. It seems Mark doesn't know about this, my lawyer said, handing me a letter. The letter briefly requested to verify the truth behind Mark's claims. I agreed through my lawyer and chose a location far from my current residence for precaution. At the scheduled meeting with the opposing lawyer, Mark didn't show up. The lawyer was young and polite, greeting me properly upon arrival. He revealed that his client was actually Mark's mother. According to him, Mark remained silent during their discussions, keeping his head down. His parents kept accusing me, claiming I fabricated fault to demand compensation. As I listened, the lawyer handed me a document detailing the alleged malicious actions. However, my lawyer and I noticed that the document was intentionally crafted to demean me. I explained each point in detail, and the opposing lawyer nodded earnestly, showing understanding. My lawyer presented evidence in line with my explanations. I see the content of your statements is completely different, Shelley. You have solid evidence and a strong case, he commented. Oh, this part is reversed. I pointed out and corrected a mistake. The opposing lawyer was visibly shocked. Once the explanation concluded, he left the room with the same politeness as when he arrived. My lawyer and I strategized to expose Mark and his parents' falsehoods, reaching out to other relevant parties to set up a meeting to discuss compensation. About a month after the meeting with the opposing lawyer, Mark and his parents arrived looking haggard. His mother glared at me as if seeing an enemy. You seem to be enjoying all this trouble. Who do you think is responsible for this situation? She asked, dissatisfied with the private dining room I had chosen. It was unfortunate that she didn't like the upscale restaurant she used to favor. However, her irritation might also be influenced by the fact that the opposing lawyer, having learned the truth, dropped their defense. Mother, you used to like this place, right? I anticipated her delight, but she met my words with a somber expression. We entered the restaurant, greeted by staff, briefed on our situation, and escorted to a private room. Mark remained silent until we were seated, then suddenly grew emotional. Shelley, I was wrong. Please help me. I can't go on like this. I'll do anything you say. Please come back, Mark pleaded, stunning his parents. I offered a kind smile, momentarily easing Mark's distress. However, I signaled my lawyer, who handed Mark a document. As Mark paled, I urged him to read it. His mother snatched it, glaring furiously. The document meticulously refuted each of Mark's claims in stark red ink. Enraged, she splashed water on my face, berating me for my arrogance. To everyone's surprise, I burst into laughter at the absurdity of the situation. My laughter caught them off guard, including my lawyer. Yes, it seems I wasn't the perfect wife, I quipped. I shared the burden of household chores, endured criticism for my infertility, and even had my earnings taken. As Mark's parents continued to rail against me, I signaled my lawyer, who produced a photograph. It depicted Mark entering a hotel with a young woman, my former boss and Mark's cousin Ashley. Shocked into silence, Mark couldn't deny the evidence. Ashley explained the situation, revealing Mark's infidelity. In the face of his guilt, I submitted the divorce papers and compensation documents. Mark, overwhelmed, began to cry. His parents, equally shocked, faced the reality of their son's actions. Within a month, Ashley informed me that Mark and his parents had moved due to financial strain. Mark's salary couldn't sustain their spending habits, and they sought rent assistance. The compensation for the deceived woman and myself was covered by Ashley's parents. Surprisingly, Ashley found love with Mark's former lawyer, drawn to his decisiveness. Embracing the unexpected turn of events, I started blogging about my experiences, leading to new writing opportunities. Since the divorce, I've been pursued by a corporate executive I met through business. Our relationship turned romantic, and he's proposed we live together. While I contemplate my answer, I'm certain of my decision. As I prepare for our date tomorrow, I reflect on the journey that brought me here, seated in front of my computer once again. One day at the hospital where I am employed, I unexpectedly crossed paths with Jessica, a friend of my mom. With a surprised tone, she questioned my presence, stating that I seemed completely out of place. She warned me that if I came seeking a job, I wouldn't find one, instructing me to go back home. Jessica's unexpected comment left the surrounding doctors in a state of frozen uncertainty. I couldn't fathom what she was implying, hoping it wouldn't escalate into a serious matter that might already be too late to rectify. It appeared Jessica hadn't grasped that making an enemy out of me wasn't wise. However, silence was no longer an option. Addressing Jessica directly, I couldn't help but wonder if she was fearless or simply clueless. With a perplexed look, as if she didn't comprehend the meaning at all, she responded, "Huh. What are you talking about? Let me introduce myself. I am Emily, a 35-year-old mother with an active 7-year-old daughter and a mischievous 1-year-old son. My husband, John, is 2 years younger than me and works diligently as a nurse at the General Hospital, caring for patients. I had a job too, but after the birth of our second son, I am currently enjoying maternity leave. Our family recently moved from a cramped 2-bedroom apartment to a second-hand house, bought with a loan. Despite its age, the house has a charming appeal, with a spacious garden for the kids and a soothing view from the rooftop balcony. There's also a lush park nearby where our family spends weekends, turning it into our weekend paradise. The story of Jessica and me began when our daughters, of the same age, started playing together in the park. Jessica, a surgeon at the same hospital where John works, wore designer clothes, and her daughter followed suit in renowned brands. Excited by the coincidence, she expressed a desire to meet my husband, leading to a planned tea gathering at our house. However, upon Jessica's arrival, she displayed blatant rudeness, appraising our belongings and questioning the history of our house. Her impertinent remarks continued during tea, questioning John's choice of being a nurse and suggesting financial instability. Each word cut deep, leaving us at a loss for words. After she left, I apologized sincerely to John for the uncomfortable experience. Concerned, I contemplated keeping some distance from Jessica in the future. John reassured me with a warm smile, suggesting that while it's good to make connections with neighborhood moms, it might be best not to get too involved with Jessica. As time passed, our family experienced new changes. After giving birth to our second son and celebrating his first birthday, I contemplated returning to work. With John's parents providing support with the kids, I found myself with some spare time at the hospital where my husband works, enjoying a hot coffee at the hospital cafe. I'd heard a familiar voice from behind. It was Jessica. "Oh my, isn't that Emily? It's been such a long time." "Hello, Jessica. How have you been?" "Good. What brings you here today? Are you here to see John?" I inquired. "Yes, just some errands. Maybe a job interview or something. It must be tough on just John's income, right?" Her words dripped with sarcasm, and she grinned smugly. Wanting to avoid a troublesome conversation, I responded lightly, "Well, something like that." However, Jessica continued probing with a searching gaze. "This hospital has various stores, right? So where are you working part-time? At the convenience store? Or maybe the restaurant?" After a brief silence, I curtly replied, "Sorry, it's about time for my appointment." I left the keg quickly, moving swiftly through the hospital. I took the elevator to the top floor, heading to the director's office for an important job consultation. After about an hour of discussion, I made my way to the large auditorium of the university for my next appointment. There was an important announcement from the director scheduled that afternoon, with all the hospital staff gathered. On the way to the auditorium, I ran into John. "Oh, John, that's great. After the director's talk, let's go for lunch together," I suggested. "Sounds good. It's a bit of a walk, but how about pasta?" he offered with a smile. "The pasta place behind the hospital sounds good. I haven't been there in a long time. I'm actually looking forward to it." I agree happily. Lunch with my husband at the hospital was a rare treat. In the hallway to the auditorium, I ran into several doctors, engaging in brief conversations while exchanging greetings. John moved ahead quickly, and I followed at a leisurely pace toward the passageway leading to the auditorium. Along the way, I happened to meet some colleague doctors. "Emily, it's really been a while, and I heard you had a child. Congratulations from the bottom of my heart." Warm words of congratulations were exchanged. Another doctor joined in. "Emily, you were such a big help here. We've been in quite a stir since you left," he said with a laugh, hinting at the struggles. Then, another one asked with interest, "Is your return imminent?" Despite such inquiries, the reunion was comforting, filled with nostalgia and relief to see my colleagues well. But the atmosphere quickly changed. Jessica suddenly appeared and asked curiously, "Emily, why are you here? Are you heading to the auditorium by any chance?" "Yes, that's right. I have some business," I responded modestly yet clearly due to the presence of several colleagues. But Jessica's questions only grew. "But the gathering is only for doctors and nurses, right? Why would a part-timer be here?" she asked, not hiding her skepticism. Her remark brought silence to the corridor, a silence that seemed indicative. "A part-time lady like her?" a doctor muttered. "Is she okay, I wonder?" Another doctor murmured worriedly, not wanting to be involved in unnecessary commotion. I tried to weather Jessica's words. However, it seemed to only incite Jessica. "Why are you ignoring me? It's like you don't think at all," Jessica exclaimed with a sneer. "Lost your way? The auditorium isn't this way. If you're looking for part-time work, go the other direction." "Now please leave," she commanded, looking down on me. The doctors present were appalled by Jessica's behavior, but sympathetically, they began to stand by me, attempting to defuse the situation. The surrounding doctors raised their voices in unison against Jessica. Disappointment and anger were evident on their faces, and their voices contained a strong sense of rejection toward Jessica's actions. "Hold on, you! What kind of way is that to speak to Emily? Don't you have any manners? Apologize to her right now," they demanded, not just disapproving but reproaching Jessica's conduct. The doctors gathered, looking tense, and confronted Jessica, the atmosphere charged with tension. Jessica, faced with the united front against her, appeared confused and at a loss for words. What's going on? I just pointed out that she doesn't belong here. The meeting is only for relevant personnel, and she doesn't fit the bill, right?" She tried to justify her stance, but my patience had reached its limit. With a composed tone, but with content sharp as a blade, I addressed Jessica. "Jessica, you really are brave, aren't you? Or is it that you simply can't read the room?" I critiqued calmly. Unable to find a rebuttal, she stared back at me, perplexed. "Huh. What'd you just say?" I calmly made my position clear. "You'll understand soon enough. The actions you took against me and your careless remarks, the serious consequences they could bring." The doctors present showed no sympathy for Jessica. "Look, your future is now utterly uncertain," they said cuttingly. "You might want to start looking for another job while you still can." They nodded earnestly to each other. Clearly cornered, Jessica was still unable to hide her panic and anger. "So why on earth are all of you defending this non-regular employee so much? I don't understand why you rate her so highly." She raised her voice. The conversation among the doctors echoed in the hallway. "Are you the new surgical specialist?" One doctor inquired. "So that's why you don't know Emily? That's quite pitiful," while another added, "Jessica," with anger on her face and indignation in her tone, retorted, "Can you explain what you mean by that?" Her anger stemmed from the belief that judging people by their professional standing, regardless of their duties as a doctor, was against human dignity. The fact that someone with such values was in our workplace was deeply shocking to me, and I couldn't help but feel distrustful. Jessica seemed unaware, but in fact, I was the very person she should respect the most. The other doctors completely ignored Jessica's questions and left her with cold stares, quietly leaving the scene. Then I stated calmly, "Well, Jessica, we can talk more about this later. You may find my husband's position as a nurse pitiable, but no matter how hard you try, you can never be like John. Besides, the fact that you find meaning in competing shows a great misunderstanding on your part." Jessica became flustered. "Wait a minute. Who on earth are you? You're not just a part-timer, are you?" She raised her voice. I smiled secretly and replied, "As I've already said, you'll come to understand shortly." And with that, I hurried off toward the auditorium. As I entered the auditorium, a large number of doctors had already gathered, and the director stood in front of the screen. "Thank you all for gathering here during your busy schedules. Today, I would like to discuss the future direction of our hospital," he began, and then proceeded to make an important announcement. Seeing John in the crowd, he approached me and whispered, "Emily, good timing. I happened to overhear a bit earlier. Was there some trouble with Jessica?" "Yes, she did point out something minor, but it's not a big deal," I replied. "Interestingly, it seems she has misunderstood me for a part-time worker at this hospital," I replied. John looked incredulous and responded, "No way, Emily, as a part-timer?" We couldn't help but suppress our laughter at the absurdity of the situation. Amidst this, the director concluded the explanation of the annual business plan and moved on to a significant personnel announcement. As you all know, our hospital is well-staffed with an adequate number of doctors and nurses. To further improve the quality of our medical services, we plan to actively implement overseas training programs. The first training is scheduled in 2 months, and we will select 5 doctors and 5 nurses for it, he declared. This announcement was met with cheers from the attending doctors, and everyone was excited about the prospect. Overseas training meant an excellent opportunity to learn about the latest medical practices in the world. Since it was the hospital's first initiative of its kind since its establishment, everyone's eyes sparkled with the news. The director continued solemnly, yet with an undertone of expectation. "Now let's proceed with announcing the names of the rest who have been selected." As he spoke, a silence of mixed tension and anticipation fell, and the names of the chosen 10 were called out one by one. Although John's name was not called this time, his expression did not show disappointment. He quietly watched with a sense of celebration as each selected individual stepped forward. Addressing the 10 lined up on stage, the director asked, "Are all of you ready in spirit for the training? Please share a word about your enthusiasm and determination." He gently encouraged them. Each gave a brief, resolute speech, reaffirming their strong intentions. After everyone had spoken, it was finally Jessica's turn. With proper decorum, yet confidently, she said, "I am truly grateful for this valuable opportunity for training. I aim to contribute to the further progress of our hospital with the cutting-edge medical techniques I will learn abroad," she said with a polished greeting. Afterward, she turned slowly towards where we were seated and continued with her unique assertive tone. "However, this hospital has inexperienced nurses who continue to fail the national exam and impudent individuals who attempt to attend medical conferences despite being non-regular staff. I intend to improve and transform all these aspects." Jessica's provocative declaration changed the atmosphere of the venue, and the looks directed at her turned icy. Her words highlighted the hospital's tensions and how dangerous youthful overconfidence can be, especially the director's sharp gaze seemed to freeze the room, adding significant weight to the situation. The director, maintaining his composure, asked, "Jessica, that was about those 2 sitting there, wasn't it?" His smile was calm yet did not reach his eyes. "You said there were unsuitable people mingled in here, right?" Confidently nodding, she answered, "Yes, exactly. There are those unfit for this noble assembly," she answered with conviction, remaining composed. The director responded, "Street Emily, Could you come forward, please? With this unexpected invitation, I, who had been merely an observer, suddenly found myself at the center of attention. Confused and starting to lose her confidence, Jessica questioned, "Why? Why are you calling her name?" She struggled to grasp the situation, and the director, showing disappointment towards Jessica, said with a quiet voice, "Jessica, I am disappointed in you. Emily, please introduce yourself to everyone." Taking a deep breath, I recounted the beginning of my career, important milestones, and my temporary step back to become a mother. I continued, "Hello, everyone. It's been a while. I am Emily, the chief of the medical department. I apologize for any inconvenience my maternity leave may have caused, but I will be resuming my duties next month. I look forward to working with you all again." Jessica's voice couldn't hide her surprise. "Wait, she's the chief of the medical department?" Her eyes searched the room for confirmation. Indeed, as the head of the medical team, I had taken a 2-year parental leave to birth and raise my first son. The director, affirming the truth, added quietly, "By the way, Emily is my daughter." His words resonated in the room with undeniable clarity, defining the reality of the situation. Jessica's expression went from confusion to shock, her mouth agape as if to object to the reality, but no words came out. The room, filled with hospital staff, could not contain its reaction, and suppressed laughter spilled out at the unexpected turn of events. The director began speaking in a relaxed tone. "Jessica, for this upcoming overseas training, you have been assigned to be the team leader. Your deployment will be in a conflict zone in the Middle East. There is a shortage of both medication and medical equipment, and a very challenging situation is anticipated. It will be interesting to see if your abilities will be fully utilized, but don't worry, Emily will be there to support you. Learn as much as you can under her guidance." Proudly, Jessica responded with dignity, "I am a doctor too. Although I have no experience working abroad, my clinical skills and treatment records are first class. I will not allow myself to be underestimated." I replied to Jessica with a calm but firm voice. "Let me make one thing clear, Jessica. In the near future, I am going to take over the directorship of this hospital from my father. Do you understand the weight of this fact?" Jessica's expression stiffened, and seeing this, I continued, "Yes, it seems you understand. Well, depending on my decision, your future in this hospital may be affected." Jessica could no longer hide her agitation, and I calmly added, "I haven't heard such a thing." Jan intervened, calmly adding his words, "Jessica, we had not informed you about that matter beforehand. Your disrespectful attitude towards Emily may well be something you deeply regret in the future." Towards the end of the meeting, the director stated firmly, "Please, everyone, a bit of silence. Jessica, in the discussions here, in the end, results are everything. No matter how excellent you may be, that is just one aspect. What's important is the results you can achieve in this hospital, and on that front, I have great expectations of you." Jessica fell silent at the director's words, bowed her head, and nodded without saying anything. The director concluded with that, today's meeting is adjourned." As his words ended, everyone in the auditorium stood up and returned to their respective places. Stepping out of the director's office leisurely, I casually said, "Shall we go for lunch? I've got a craving for pasta today." Side by side with John, I started walking towards our favorite pasta place in the backyard, leaving the hospital building behind. As we were about to pass the small smoking area set up behind the hospital, I spotted Jessica, who appeared to be deep in thought, taking a drag of her cigarette. The moment our eyes met, Jessica awkwardly looked away. At that instant, a sudden event caught our attention. A loud crash sounded, and right before our eyes, a car had rear-ended another in an accident. Jan and I sprang into action immediately. The area was nearly deserted, so it was crucial for us to move quickly to help. "Are you okay?" John called out with concern and quickly checked on the people involved in the accident. One was the driver in the car that was hit, and the other was a pedestrian who happened to be walking by. Jessica also rushed to the accident scene, following us, but seemed overwhelmed by the chaos. Acting on her medical instincts, I began to give directions. John, quickly get that man into a safe position and check his pulse. Jan moved promptly, following my instructions and beginning his actions. As an emergency nurse, John had been granted special opportunities to accumulate frontline medical experience, including attending surgeries conducted by me. I had trained him rigorously, and he had developed exceptional practical skills. I then directed Jessica with calm and clarity. Jessica, check if that elderly person is bleeding and assess their level of consciousness. However, Jessica seemed paralyzed by the seriousness of the situation, standing still without moving. My voice grew firmer as I insisted. Jessica, do you understand what I'm saying? Please respond quickly. Her voice had a hint of tension as Jessica replied, yes. What should I do? Her panic was evident, and instead of helping, it seemed to add to the confusion at the scene. I rebuked Jessica firmly yet patiently. Don't you know what to do in an emergency? I doubt you're even a surgeon. Jessica responded with an attitude that could be perceived as anger, saying, That's not true. There's nothing I can't do. However, her actions, though active, clearly lacked effective measures, and she was just bustling about the scene. I then looked to John. John, could you measure that elderly person's blood pressure and make sure there's no bleeding? I gave the orders with composure. John promptly replied, Understood, and began to prepare for controlling the situation. The accident scene began to regain some order with a swift response from me and Jan. John spoke to Jessica with an unusual sternness. Jessica, come over here and help, he directed. Jessica complained. What do you mean? A nurse asking for such a thing? But John cut her off. This is no place for someone who can't do anything. If you're not going to be of help in this critical moment where lives are at stake, please step back, he said decisively. Jessica was at a loss for words and stepped back from the scene silently. John reviewed the situation and reported to me, the vitals are stable, but there might be internal damage. We should conduct a thorough examination as soon as possible. As professionals, they demonstrated readiness to collaborate with other medical staff around them, doing their best for the patients. I directed the response with a steady demeanor. Let's begin the procedures then. The driver over there seems to be disoriented, but I don't see any serious symptoms. Let's move him out of here. I then turned to Jessica. Could you please call an ambulance on your cell phone? Despite my words, Jessica stood frozen, unable to move. I addressed Jessica with suspicion. Jessica, I'm speaking to you. Do you hear me? Jessica seemed confused, hesitatingly murmuring, what's the number for the ambulance again? Jan intervened. Just give me that phone. He stepped in and took over, arranging for the ambulance. About 5 minutes later, police and fire department personnel arrived, and the once chaotic accident scene started to be sorted out gradually. People gathered, including doctors, department heads, medical students, and even professors. But without being disturbed by this, I spoke to Jessica with calm and stern emphasis on the gravity of the situation. To be frank, Jessica, your actions earlier were more of a hindrance than a help. What exactly can you say you've accomplished? I posed the direct question. Jessica was silent, unable to answer. In the medical field, every minute, every second can determine the outcome. This is not a place to protect your ego. Jessica's voice was barely audible as she apologized, I'm sorry. The crowd at the accident scene quietly observed their exchange, and the director himself was also present. Jessica just seemed out of place and embarrassed. I continued, addressing Jessica. You've looked down on Jan as just a nurse, but the fact is your positions are different. There's no meaning in comparing you and John. He is one of the most competent nurses in this hospital. Can't you see now how powerless and insufficient your actions were in this situation? I confronted Jessica with the truth. Jessica retorted somewhat stubbornly. If I had more experience in emergency situations, I could handle it perfectly well. But John sensed the uncertainty behind her words and calmly exposed her vanity. You're always driven by a desire to have your accomplishments recognized. However, contrary to the superficial appraisal, your actual skills in the field are still immature. You've just demonstrated that fact yourself, he asserted. He continued, adding insult to injury. You say you'll gain experience in emergency treatment in the future, but this moment is also a practical situation. Given your current state, it's unlikely you'll have further opportunities to experience the field in the future. Jessica's confidence began to show cracks, and she seemed on the verge of tears, conscious of the surrounding eyes. Yet, the medical field, dealing with lives, demands proper judgment and strictness. Therefore, I had to convey a decision that would impact Jessica's future. Jessica, I regret to say this, but your name will be removed from the Overseas Training Program candidate list, I declared. Jessica was taken aback. I looked to the director for confirmation. Father, this decision is acceptable, correct? The director nodded deeply. No problem. This incident has given me a clear understanding of her. We have always selected trainees based on their grades, but it may be necessary to reconsider our selection system in light of this. His quiet but firm response marked a moment that signified a complete defeat for Jessica. With a calm but resolute voice, I advised Jessica, it's important for you to relearn from the basics. Only then will you have the right to compete at the same level as John. Also, take to heart the dangers of judging a person's worth by their appearance. While I considered letting you go from the workplace, I have decided to give you one more chance, the last chance. Make the most of this opportunity and show us your full effort. I advised Jessica, sternly yet justly. Afterward, they quietly left the scene, but the looks from the doctors around Jessica were cold, filled with disappointment and disapproval. Their evaluation of her future was seemingly already set. Weeks passed, and the long-awaited departure day for the overseas training arrived. Jen and I headed to the airport, excited to acquire new knowledge and experience. As for Jessica, I had heard that she resigned from the hospital just a month after the incident. She couldn't endure the cold stares of those around her and ultimately chose to prioritize her pride. Personally, I thought that it was for the best. A doctor who puts pride at the forefront doesn't deserve to hold patients' lives in their hands, and no one would want to entrust their life to such a person. On the way to the airport, I spoke to John with words filled with hope. John, let's use our abilities to turn this hospital into one of the most renowned places in the world. Jen, sharing that passion and reaffirming his determination, replied, That's right. I need to work even harder and obtain my medical license as soon as possible. And so I quietly vowed to myself once more my unwavering resolve as a doctor to fulfill my duties.